So where does a spill and the seemingly never-ending clean-up leave BP as a company? Here to discuss its prospects is Head of Equities at Royal London Asset Management, Jane Coffey. Hi, Jane. And you hold BP shares. How have you been watching this unfold? I mean, interesting quote there from the Oppenheimer analyst who says that BP's operating cash flow per month is $3 billion. So it does have the money, doesn't it?
It does have the money, yes. And I mean, I think the key thing here is BP has obviously really tried to do as much as possible, as quickly as possible, to keep its reputation. Now, we're watching very closely how the Top Kill operation will go today, and if they could actually stop the flood, then that is going to make a big difference to perceptions. On the longer term, we have to look at the investigation into how BP worked before this, whether there was negligence in their operations and whether the processes that they had for safety were actually impaired. And that could be where BP would really lose value. If it's found that this was an accident, it couldn't have been avoided, or it wasn't intrinsically a breakdown in processes and health and safety, then I think that BP shares are looking incredibly cheap at the moment.
Cheap for the long term, though. I mean, not as a short-term investment. Cheap for the long term.
Absolutely, but long term is where cheap actually counts.
Yes.
And you currently are getting nearly an 8% yield, dividend yield, and they're trading at less than 7 times earnings. Now, that's 7 times a ordinary year's earnings, not 7 times when you take off the clean-up for BP. But when we're looking at shares, we should be looking at what the operating earnings can be on the ongoing basis.
If Top Kill doesn't work, if the litigation goes on and on and on for months and years, I mean, what is the reputational damage? How do you quantify reputational damage for a company like BP?
Well, it is very difficult to quantify that, and whether it is really just for BP or whether it is for the oil industry as a whole. And I think that is where the inquiry into whether BP's safety processes were shown to have been followed and that this was just an unavoidable accident that could have happened to any oil company, or whether it was much more BP Pacific, will be key in making that decision.
Let's take away briefly from BP, Jane. 30 seconds. Markets are crazy right now, aren't they? Such volatility. What's your advice to investors right now? What should they be doing on the strategy front?
Well, I think now it really is the time where you need to look somewhat longer term and decide, is your long-term scenario deflation, or is it that the governments will muddle through? If they will muddle through and get through here, then markets are cheap.